guys, welcome back to another episode of the CDP Growth Show. On today's episode, I'm joined by Mark Colgan, who is the current CRO of TaskDrive. Mark, how you doing?
Yeah, very well, thank you. Very glad it's Friday as well.
Likewise. Now, Mark, before we kind of dive into the main part of the episode, just give my audience like a really quick rundown of first of all what TaskDrive is, and then really what you guys do as a platform.
Sure. Okay. So TaskDrive is a done for you research process and service. So we help B2B sales and marketing teams by providing them with lead research and data enrichment services.
Yeah.
It just means that all of that time-consuming tasks that their SDRs or sales development reps and salespeople focus on can be outsourced to us, and we give them back time so they could spend more of their time making phone calls, writing personalized emails, and closing more deals.
So, something that I really like asking my guests is, because I think it really helps the audience kind of understand how you've kind of got into the B2B SaaS world. And it's, what has really been your timeline into, first of all, how you've kind of been associated with TaskDrive and just how you've kind of got into this world of B2B SaaS marketing?
Sure. I guess I'll start at the beginning. So I studied marketing at university and did a placement year, a year in industry.
Yeah.
However, when I was looking at the time, digital marketing wasn't really a thing.
Yeah.
And a lot of the marketing placements were pretty much like admin and T-boy. So I actually decided to go and work at a recruitment company, a very well-known one in the UK, and got a lot of training there of account management and sales.
Yeah.
After university, I stayed in recruitment and I worked both for agencies and then went internal. But in one of my internal roles, I was actually recruiting for sales and marketing professionals. And I was looking at the job descriptions thinking, I could do this for the marketing roles.
Yeah.
So I took it upon myself to learn digital marketing just by basic SEO and website building.
Yeah.
And then built up enough experience to interview for a marketing role. And that was around 9 years ago now. So for the last 8 or 9 years, I've been in B2B marketing. And then in the last 8 years, it's always been SaaS marketing as well. So very much positioned myself between product marketing and sales. And that's really where I specialize.
Makes sense. So how long have you been with TaskDrive now for then?
So coming up a year now. I've been with TaskDrive for almost a year.
Got it. Okay. And I guess since you've kind of been working with TaskDrive, what's really been, obviously, as a CRO, what's really been like your kind of main the main kind of things that you've been working on, as a CRO, some of the main implementations, whether it's been on the sales marketing side, what have been some of them kind of main things that you've been helping guys into that?
So I guess when you come into any role, when you're new, there's a number of things that you need to fix or to improve. So a lot of my work has been process improvement and finding efficiencies within the way that we run our service.
Yeah.
And then it's been ramping up the sales and marketing. So we had a very good foundation from a marketing point of view, but we were now building on top of that and generating more demand rather than just doing the basics of marketing. And then from a sales point of view, it's ramping up the outbound efforts, having more conversations, booking more meetings, and closing more deals.
Awesome. Okay. And, we really get a kind of range of founders that listen to the show, founders, marketing teams, and really, like I said, on the entire spectrum. So we've got early stage, kind of people that are in that more growth stage, pre-growth. And, something that I think a question that really provides a lot of value to the audience is really around, let's imagine, TaskDrive, it was just starting out again today. You were, a very kind of new company, you're still very much in that early stage. What would be like one of them, and it's a tough question, right, because there's never just one strategy that is the main growth channel, but what would you say has been like the kind of best, either it's a growth channel, a strategy that you guys have really implemented that has been one of your kind of best growth strategies?
Sure. Well, I think before you get into strategy and tactics and channels, you really need to understand who your market is and what that audience is like.
Really,
so for me, the most important thing that anybody can do, and even at a growth stage company, you still want to be doing this on a regular basis, but it's speaking to your customers and really understanding their challenges, their pain points, find out where they spend time online. And then you can leverage that information, and then also the audiences of, non-competing products. So products that serve the same audience. And that drives really high quality inbound leads because the audience is correct and you're getting the social proof from another company. And that kind of leads quite nicely into partnerships and finding those win-win-win scenarios with those people that work with the same audience. And all you need to do there to make that work is provide value to that audience.
So like webinars and JVs, and have you guys done things like that? Or
Yeah, webinars, podcasts, joint content and guest posting, jumping on some calls and doing AMAs, answering the questions that people have. It's the easiest way to create content.
Yeah, I think, but especially now with what's going on, I'm seeing a lot of people, doing the webinars, and I think what you said there about AMAs and really providing content that is really specific. Because I'm sure you'll agree that there's lots of companies that they skip that customer kind of research part, and they skip that customer just sitting down with the customers and really understanding what it is they want to hear, and they jump straight into ads and content, and it's just I kind of call it posting content for the sake of posting content.
Yeah, it's Me Too articles. Exactly. Someone suggested that we should create a post about the coronavirus, and I said no, because everybody else is doing it and they're doing a good job. Let's be different and post and create content on something else.
Yeah, it's being original. Yeah, completely agree. And I think the point of us as well, partnerships, again, something that a lot of companies they forget that part. I see a lot. They want to jump straight to the Facebook ads, straight to the cold email strategy, right? When actually there's probably another company that are in a very similar market to you. If you just tapped into their audience and had something of value that you could offer, it could open up a massive potential in terms of adding users. So
100% agree.
Yeah. Now, kind of moving more onto the kind of tech heavy side and how you guys have really built out your tech stack. Because again, I'm sure something that you'll have seen, maybe even building out your own tech stack or with other companies as well, is you can very easily, especially with marketing software, sales tech softwares, there's so many out there now that it can really create a lot of confusion for newer marketing teams, and there's you can very quickly have 15 different marketing softwares that actually, if you just figured out how to use free really well, you wouldn't need these to be paying for these 15 different softwares. So it's, I think, something that would be really interesting is to hear how you've really structured your kind of growth stack for TaskDrive and some of the core softwares that that you guys have got in place.
Sure. So it's worth noting that before I joined TaskDrive, I worked for 2 years as a consultant, and I helped with sales and marketing automation and CRM implementations and optimization. So a lot of experience in that with B2B SaaS companies, seeing what works and what doesn't. The good thing about TaskDrive, we service the B2B SaaS industry. However, we're not a software company. We're a people as a service. So, our service costs $1,500 per month. And that price is a bit too high for self-service. So there needs to be that interaction with a salesperson. And we're quite fortunate that it's not too high, that it's just a one-call close. So we often close a customer on the call, or maybe after a follow-up call as well. But that allows us to have a really lean tech stack, and we don't have volumes of data coming in, and we're not looking at user data and product data. So with that in mind, I'll quickly run through the main technology that we use. And we can dive in deeper if you'd like to ask me any questions. So we use PersistIQ to send out cold email. And those cold emails go to prospects, potentially onto podcasts that we want to guests be interviewed on, and with our partners as well, as we build out our partner network. Pipedrive is our CRM. Everything lives in there. It's one of the simplest CRMs, but it's pretty robust as well. I could talk for hours about CRM, so maybe pick my brains on that after. Calendly for us is really an important part of our process, because we drive everybody to that sales call, that discovery call. We have 15 different Calendly links, and rather than mess around with attribution, we just wanted to keep it simple. So if we're running a specific campaign, we just duplicate a Calendly link and have that Calendly link as the main attribution point. Where we got those prospects from. We also use Lead Feeder really effectively for people that come onto our website. And then we've got researchers, so we've got the time and capacity to search for the individuals that likely may have been on the website from those companies. If it's Oracle, Coca-Cola, it's very hard to work out the individual. But if it's the more SME, it's easier to find out. We use Autopilot HQ, so that's our marketing automation platform. Everything, all of the automations, the lead nurture, the re-engagement campaigns all come from Autopilot, and they have a really good integration with Pipedrive, which is great. Google Analytics for our kind of high-level overview. If I'm honest, I'm not really one to check out Google Analytics on a daily or even weekly basis. I like to look at the trends. Zapier is our glue for everything. So we stitch everything together. And then Google Sheets is really the power horse behind a lot of the decision making I do. So we use Google Sheets. I could use Databox. I could use lots of different other tools, but again, I was trying to hit it with a simple stick.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And it's interesting because kind of going back to the more the marketing automation tool and how you guys, because I've personally not really heard too much about Autopilot. I'm assuming that tools like HubSpot and things like that are a bit too overkill for what you guys are doing, just because of,
and they're expensive. And
yeah, exactly.
So I'm a HubSpot power user. I've used it and implemented it a number of times now. I think there's even a case study with me on their website. So I'm a big fan of HubSpot. But if you want to get the most out of HubSpot, you really need to be on their medium or pro. I can't remember the names of the tiers now, but you need to be paying $1,000 a month. And if you don't quite have that budget, then Autopilot and ActiveCampaign are two very, very good automation engines behind the scenes.
Yeah, interesting. And I think, again, I think a lot of companies, they, going back to the point of just keeping it simple, they don't keep it simple, and before you know it, they've got 25 different marketing tools that they don't need. When actually, if they just, like I said, figured out how to use their marketing automation tool properly, they could probably actually track most of what's going on in just that tool. So what have been some of the things that you've seen, perhaps other companies running into, maybe even yourself, just some challenges that you've seen of a lot of the that kind of companies tend to run into when building out that growth stack?
Sure. So I think a lot of people believe that automation is the silver bullet and it's going to solve a lot of their problems. I remember having a conversation once with a client when I was consulting, and they wanted me to set up a lead nurture sequence. And so I took 5 minutes, built the steps, and I was like, there you go, there's your lead nurture sequence. And they're like, wow, that's quick. And I was like, well, I need the content. And a lot of people overlook the fact that content is really what is required across all stages of the buyer's journey and behind the scenes with automation. Now, obviously, some automations don't require content, but if you want to nurture a lead for 12 months, then you need 12 pieces of content or 12 places to send them to. So I think that's the first one. It's not a silver bullet. You need to understand what it is that you want to automate. And I think a lot of people automate too early, and they potentially automate the wrong processes. So there's no point automating a process if you don't know it's going to be successful or it's because it's going to skew your results and throw you off. So I always recommend just automating just a part of the process and then automating the next part until you then have the full process automated. Other mistakes is, I think, looking for an all-in-one solution. It's very hard for one software company to build an all-in-one solution for multiple verticals and people. So I often say, forget the all-in-one solution. Let's just pick 2 or 3 that can integrate very nicely. All-in-ones are possible. If you're using Salesforce and then Pardot, yes, you can have a pretty robust marketing automation and sales CRM that way, but you're going to be spending thousands of dollars a month. I think a lot of companies, especially in the CRM space, they're currently dealing with all deals in a spreadsheet, and then they go to Salesforce, which is, a very, very powerful CRM, but it's very complex. And oftentimes their sales processes are either very simple, so they don't really need Salesforce, or their processes aren't that mature, and therefore Salesforce is just overkill. And I love Salesforce, been, again, implemented it a few times, been over to their Dreamforce conference, but they lock you into a 12-month contract, and then it's a 4% increase in renewal typically when you sign up, and then you're stuck with it. And if you don't need it, don't purchase it. The last thing, and this is one of the biggest mistakes I see, again, from a CRM point of view and talking about sales, is implementing a new CRM or even changing processes in your existing CRM isn't enough. A lot of people forget the change management element, especially if you have a large team of salespeople. There's often that fear of change, but really it's not change. It's the fact that they're no longer in control of the way that they were working before. So you really have to spend a lot of time training and overcoming the objections that you'll have from your sales team, because the CRM is useless if the salespeople aren't keeping it up to date.
And I think, again, the point of, automating too early, I think it's, I mean, this goes for just, marketing strategies, anything really that is to do with growth in the business. I think whenever you push too quickly or automate too quickly, I think that causes a lot of problems, particularly in them early stages where you've not quite got the product market fit and you've not quite figured out the market. Because then, and the marketing technologies, they change so quickly now. You've got one software now that in 6 months from now may not even be, useful to the stack. So I think you've really got to make sure that whatever you are gluing together, like you said, is going to be, a stack that in 6 months from now is still going to be viable when the market 100%. Changes and when you're going through growth pains. So yeah, completely agree. And again, I think obviously in your case, because of what you're doing, it's a bit more of a kind of mid to high touch kind of model in terms of ACV and stuff. So I think over the last, I'd probably say over the last few years, there's this been, there's been this kind of buzzword, CDP, that a lot of companies have started to implement, across lots of different sectors, lots of different kind of models. And I think really because of just, in terms of organizing data and kind of unifying, everything together, I think it's been quite a useful tool, for a lot of companies to have in place. But I know there are lots of alternatives to CDPs, and I'd be really interested to kind of get your perspective around, is a CDP important? Where should it be in place? And, what have you guys kind of used as potentially an alternative?
Yeah, so I think CDP is certainly important when you have free trial, freemium, and a number of users in your product. You definitely want to have some product analytics, and you want to be using something like Segment, either as your CDP or as firing that data into a customer data platform. But for us, we just use the CRM. Our volumes aren't super high, but higher than a spreadsheet would do. So, but I think why it's worth mentioning why we've decided not to use a CDP is we work in a really competitive industry, and so lead generation. There's so many different lead generation tools, providers, services, you name it. It's a big industry, and therefore, like paid ads and SEO can be quite challenging because for some of our keywords we rank against HubSpot, and we're never going to beat HubSpot. For budgets as well, you never want to poke the bear and go up against the pockets of Salesforce, or so. We take a very much, we generate a lot of our demand through partner content as well as outbound sales. And all of that data is data that we control anyway. So we are setting up the campaigns, we are partnering with the right partners, so we can keep a track of things. So it doesn't need to go into a central customer data platform. We just want to make sure that we have that activity logged against the contact feeds in TaskDrive.
Yeah, I think it does definitely depend on, like you said, where there is that kind of lower touch model, where there is lots more volume in kind of e-commerce and lower touch SaaS, then it's absolutely fundamental. But I think where you are in that kind of mid to high touch model, I think there are solutions now that are starting to pop up, for things that are, tools that are kind of linked with Salesforce and stuff. But I think across the board, you kind of have your own, your own kind of alternatives as well. It's complementary. Yeah. Agree. And to kind of wrap this up, something that it's a tough question, right? And it's hard to kind of pinpoint, one metric, but in SaaS now I felt the world has become so complicated over the last few years, of all these marketers, throwing around these different, metrics, and there's CAC and LTV and MQLs and SQLs, and it's just, especially as an early stage founder, it can be quite confusing and quite intimidating, right? When you've got all these different metrics. So, really kind of zooming in on the marketing, what would you say as a, maybe as a new founder, what's like the one metric that you really you need to be tracking, as a SaaS marketer?
Yeah, well, I think your original question was, to understand the customer better.
Yeah, understand the customer better.
So for me, the real metric is number of customers spoken to, and it's as simple as that. There's so many marketers, so many salespeople that don't actually reach out and speak to prospects to explore what their challenges and pain points are and what their day-to-day responsibilities are. I feel that there's so many marketers are afraid of speaking to customers, and I love speaking to customers and prospects. So I'll speak to them day in, day out, not try and close them, not try and pitch to them. But it's the best way to understand them. And then what you do is you take your learnings and optimize your campaigns with those learnings, and you test the hypotheses as well. One of the things that we speak to our prospects and customers, and I ask the question, what sort of content is missing in the industry, and can I answer that question for you? And that's, yes, I could plan my content strategy based on keywords and the likelihood of ranking number one. at the end of the day, when you have that outbound methodology and you speak to a large enough sample of customers, you find out what the key themes are, you can take that assumption that the other people you haven't spoke to may also be interested in that. So we create content based on what their challenges are and where the gaps are, and then send that out to the people who we want to target. So it's very, very targeted. It's high quality, and we get a number of inbound leads off the back of that.
Makes sense. Yeah, I think a lot of, and this is across the board, not just for SaaS, but I think a lot of, there's this, like, again, there's so many tools out there now where it's, SEO researching tools and, certain keyword planning tools. And I think it's very easy now to just stick online and just focus on using these tools 100% to get all your research and to get all the keywords. But actually, if you just go and speak, to your customer base and really ask them, okay, what is the content that you want to see? Not just what's going to rank best in Google. I think that is the way to create content. I think we are going to move away from, what just ranks best and what's best for Google, right? It's now, what do your customers actually want to read? What is the content they want?
And I think just to add to that, we're talking about B2B markets here, but every B2B person is a human being at the end of the day. And as we as consumers are being we're being made aware of more great products, Uber, Deliveroo, they're great products to use. Headspace, meditation app, it's really simple. But at the end of the day, your metrics don't tell you what your customers are thinking or what they're thinking right now or what they're thinking in a few months' time. So having those conversations, yes, CAC, all the other metrics are important, but to really understand your customers, just speak to them.
And what would you, because obviously there's probably founders listening to this saying, okay, how many conversations should I have, be having a month with my customers? Should it be like a case of you sign up a customer and then you're having them conversations, or is it, you're sitting down periodically with your customers, every quarter, for example? How are you personally going about that? Because I'm sure there's
it depends on how many customers you have in total. So you may want to say 10% would be a good number to speak to. Now, obviously, if you have 200,000 customers, that's going to be too many for you to deal with. Having these regular conversations, and when I say customers, I really do mean prospects and customers. So it's people that are using your product, but then people that aren't using it yet. And how do you get them from not using it to using it? If we're talking about customers specifically, I would certainly reach out and listen to people, but maybe use your product analytics, look at the customers who are really highly engaged in your product and speak to those. And then also speak to those customers that are at risk of churn and find out what behaviors and what triggers are causing them to be at risk. Did they just miss a step in the onboarding? Do they not fully understand the product? Once you find out those answers, you can then improve your onboarding process, for example, and then yield better results in the long run. But it pays off massively to speak on a regular basis.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think you having them constant conversations, whether it's with your current customers, prospects who are kind of in that process of, thinking kind of on the fence. I think it's so important that you are keeping potentially with, I think especially with current customers, I think it's so important that you are keeping them conversations going, because it's not just the product that is going to keep them there. It's also going to be that relationship, that you build with them. So yeah, really, really key point. And Mark, look, it's been really, really awesome having you on the podcast. I hope you enjoyed coming on.